Welcome to the Elevate podcast, brought to you by the Registered Master Builders. Each week we explore the ideas and practices that help us get the best from our businesses, our teams and ourselves. I'm your host, Ryan Castle. We talk to experts, advocates and business owners in the construction industry to share their knowledge, insights and experiences to help you build a better business and enjoy a better life. Now let the business building begin. Ankit, welcome along to the Master Builders Elevate podcast. Great to have the CEO on the call.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm excited to be on the podcast.
Some of our members won't have had the opportunity to meet you yet. Could you give us a bit of background on your journey of how you've arrived at this role of CEO for Master Builders?
Look, I think I'm very excited to take up the role of the CEO of Master Builders. I've got over 20 years of quite diverse industry experience around corporate governance, strategy, business transformation, mergers and acquisition. I'm quite excited to bring that diverse experience to Master Builders. I joined the organization February last year as a chief operating officer. And I think in the last 12 months, probably spent a big chunk of my time on the gate business to try and navigate through tough economic climate. But, I'm very excited to be part of an organization which has an ambition of building a better New Zealand. And I want to be part of it, contribute to that goal.
Fantastic. And I know this is probably a big question given the diversity of what you've been involved with before, but is there a career highlight through those things of strategy, business transformations, mergers? Is there something that really stands out for you in your previous career that you could share with us?
I think there are two. So one, I think as we are kind of getting into a world of quite a significant transformation and change, I think the value of technology is increasing, and I think the value of the people and partners is becoming even more important. And through my careers and in some roles, I work in very big technology roles. And I found that the organizations who are navigating some of these, I call it very fast evolving challenges, the organization not only look at technology, but also have quite deep connections with their staff and with their partners. And for me, I think I want to kind of bring that focus on how do we keep working with our members? How do we find and develop some key partnership in the sector? How do we develop a quite engaged staff and workforce and collectively create an environment where we can keep dealing with some of the challenges which are hitting our sector, look at some of these opportunities and work through them.
Thanks, Ankit. And I know leadership is a topic that's close to your heart. For those of you that don't follow Ankit on LinkedIn, I'd highly suggest you do. Some of the content you produce on LinkedIn is really insightful. What is it that you think you can bring around leadership to Master Builders?
I started exploring this concept of collaborative leadership and why organizations on their own won't be able to navigate some of the challenges which are coming through Industry 4.0 with I call the technology revolution. And in my mind, I think we need to foster strong partnerships with our members, with our staff, with external stakeholders, including government, if we truly want to drive meaningful growth and innovation. And so I think that's kind of what I would like to bring in. I would like to bring in a very strong sense of purpose of working with our partners, working with our members, working with the government, and trying not to do this on our own. And try and solve some of these challenges which are impacting our sector, our economy in that collaborative fashion. And from my experience, if you can do them well, if you forge good, trusting, honest relationships and partnerships, that I think adds a lot more resilience for organizations and sector to work through some of these challenges and opportunities.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's at the very core of who the Master Builders are. It's bringing together that member group and then being able to take a single voice that has, thousands of voices behind it into those partnerships, whether it be government or sector or a trade. So yeah, it seems to be at the core. So love that idea of collaborative leadership. And I'm sure we'll see more of that and examples coming out of the team. Ankit, you're, new to the CEO role, but as you said, you've been in the COO role for a while. Outside of work, what are you into? What takes you time? What are you excited about?
A lot of time with the family. So, I used to play quite a lot of golf. It's probably on a back burner at the moment. So at the moment, it will be about long walks with family, reading books. I think a lot of my after work time is to spend quality time with family. I've got two daughters, aged 12 and 17. So I spend a lot of time with them, based on the education and stuff which is happening with them and around their lives. For me, I think as I grow older and as I've had, high pressure roles. I find that work-life balance is actually quite critical for both mental well-being. And I think it enables, in my mind, good work-life balance enables people to be more creative and more engaged at work. So I work really hard and, I sometimes do long hours, but I also work very hard to ensure I spend really good quality time at home and maintain a healthy work-life balance.
So any quick tips for our members on how to maintain that work-life balance?
To prioritize it. I wrote an article about this on LinkedIn. Maybe we need to stop thinking it as work-life and think it as life-work. I think putting things in priority is the conversation you and I were having before. We bring our whole self to work. So how we feel and what's happening in our families have quite a significant impact on how we perform at work. So I think it's being very conscious on that work life is extremely important. Why we work, we work so we can have the quality of life and support our families the way we want to support. And I think when you're conscious, you make conscious time to do that. And so kind of being in a routine and operating in a routine, I find really works for me. So that's something I'll probably suggest people to become much more conscious and creating time on things you want to do outside of work and your family.
Right. So when are you hoping to get back to the golf?
Probably in a year's time. So oldest daughter, she wants to, currently in the States, she's wanting to, there's a lot of stuff at school and stuff happening. So I think we made a conscious decision, both my wife and I, on some of our hobbies we have to kind of cut that down and spend more time with the kids on the weekend around walking, sometimes playing board games and stuff like that. So probably in a year's time.
Nice. And by that time, your handicap will have slipped back to a 5, or what do you think?
35 probably.
Nice. Okay, thanks for sharing some of that personal insight. Turning back to Master Builders and your role as CEO and what you're hoping to achieve, you've mentioned that government's an important part of the partnership and that collaborative leadership. Can you give us some insight on what you're currently working on there?
So I think in the last couple of months, we've met the Housing and RMA Reform Minister, Honourable Chris Bishop, and the Building and Construction Minister, Honourable Chris Bank, multiple times. And in these meetings, we have heard that the government is aware of the need to work with the industry to find innovative solutions of the problem we are facing, primarily driven by quite significant lending restrictions, which has created significant downturn affecting our sector. And I think it's heartening to understand that government has clear understanding of the issues. And I see a strong commitment from them on continue to support the sector. And I think the budget which has come out, which has highlighted that they are looking to support the sector as much as possible, considering quite tight fiscal constraints the government is operating within. I think for us, it's extremely important to have a very solutions-based engagement with the government. So I think as much as in the last 2 months I've been in this role, we've worked quite hard to explain some of the challenges with the sector and some specific role the government can play with either policy or some of the investment decision, which in the short term reduces the pressure on the sector. We've also put a lot of solutions on the table to say this is what we as an industry doing or wanting to collaborate and do. And I think that I call it that solution focus is as important as highlighting challenges. And I think that will be our approach of continue to very proactively work with the government to make sure we navigate through, I think, probably a 12 to 18 months of quite a critical period for our sector.
And Ankit, how are you able to garner the opinion and the feeling in the member base? Are you getting contribution from your branch members? Are you able to go and meet members individually? How are you finding that intel?
So all of that. So we are lucky to have a system where we have quite a grassroots setup, where we are connected to our members, to our branches. We get a lot of feedback, which is being fed through our branch managers, through our presidents. I travel a lot, and in a short period of time, I've spent a lot of time wherever I can to go and visit our branches when opportunity comes up. We also have specific forums, residential working group, commercial working group, vertical VCLG, and all these forums have got a representation for across our membership. So all of that it gives us quite a lot of insights and information. One of the things I've realized in a very short period of time, some of the insights and information we have is actually extremely invaluable. We're actually getting quite a good subset of across our commercial members, our residential members, larger builders in residential space and smaller builders across the country. And that information is quite important for us to put together and then have quite a meaningful fact-based conversation with the government.
And at a top level, we see probably two crucial challenges going on in the sector right now: economic, which you've touched on before, and regulatory, which you mentioned. Can you give us any insight? We hear you trying to bring solutions to the table. What do you think the appetite for government currently is to help really make some progress in these areas? Of course, they've been on the table for a long time, particularly the regulatory.
I think there's a strong appetite. Regulatory changes are not easy changes to put through. And I think H1 changes was a great example. We put H1 changes through quite quickly. And I think there was not adequate implementation time for the industry to understand, to adjust, to respond to those changes. And I think it's created issues and in some cases, unintended consequences. So our view is any regulatory change takes time. It needs to be well thought through, and it needs to have quite a deep collaboration and participation from the sector. So we are working through some of the H1 changes, some of the unintended consequences it's created, and how do we work to address some of those issues. There's been quite a lot of work around fast-track consenting process and what would that look like and how that would work. And I think our view to the government has been that an approach like this in principle, if it's done right, will work, but it's about learning from experiences of H1 changes and doing it properly. I think we provide a lot of feedback into bringing more products into the country. Again, our view is as an approach, I think it will probably help reduce cost pressures over a long period of time. But in the short term, it will bring a lot of complexity because there'll be new products. Then the builders and installers have to understand those new products and figure out a way to address them. So I think it's about providing some of the feedback on some of the key policy changes the government has. I think one of the key points we are highlighting is as much as collaboration is extremely important, policy changes take quite a long time. So in some instances, running some pilot programs with us and through our members is a quite good way of getting not only industry participation and feedback, but also ease into some of those changes. So we are suggesting for fast-track consenting that we are open through our membership to engage with government to proactively work through and be available to do some pilots. And I think the combination of those will hopefully get us moving on some of these policy changes, which will probably, hopefully, impact our sector positively moving forward.
Ankit, you mentioned earlier in our podcast about the budget has just been released, that there are some good things for industry in that budget. Can you highlight a couple of things that you think might be helpful?
Of course. I think the challenge which the budget is highlighting is the government will operate in quite a tight fiscal constraint moving forward. So as a consequence of that, one of the concerns we've had is what would that do to the infrastructure investment and pipeline. And all of that plays quite a significant role in supporting the construction sector. And it's been a conversation we've been having with the government leading up to the budget. And I think government is demonstrating a commitment to infrastructure and public services. And it's evident in terms of some significant updates around investing for roads and rails and public transport. I think it's 1.2 billion have been put in the budget over 3 years in regional infrastructure. There's quite a significant allocation around education, similarly around healthcare infrastructure. So I think there's investment which is going in, which will help and support the sector. At the same time, I think on the overall front, there are both opportunities and challenges. So there are some resources available for continuing some carrying over a bill. However, I think a lot of those projects, especially large projects, have been put on hold, subject to review. So we want to spend some time just to understand what that review means and how we can get some of those projects online. I think for us, apprentice boost scheme is something which we think is quite critical for the sector moving forward, and extending that scheme to 2028 by the current government. I think it's a very welcome step for us. However, the funding of that scheme has been reduced and it's now been targeted towards key industries. So again, it's probably an area we'll spend some time with the government to make sure both that construction sector and our sector is absolutely one of the key industries where this scheme will play quite a critical role, and also keep advocating for that scheme to become permanent. So I think we're going to operate in quite a tight fiscal constraint, and the government will operate within that constraint moving forward. And it's been heartening to see some infrastructure commitment from the government, which I think demonstrates the value the government puts on a sector, and to continue some of those big infrastructure programs to take New Zealand forward. For us, I think it'll be quite critical to continue actively engage with the government to make sure these investments are done in the right way. We progress them quickly. I think we as a sector need to recover from this downturn. And I think the core of that recovery will happen once we come out of some of the constraints which have come out of a Reserve Bank and some of the lending challenges which the sector is facing. And so I think budget helps. It's probably a step in the right direction, but the core of the issue we are facing as a sector are quite significant lending constraints. And we as a sector have to work through them. So I think the real recovery will probably happen when we start seeing some of those lending constraints reduce. And probably we are hoping that recovery will start happening from later this year or early next year.
And we've talked regularly on the podcast about the challenge of cyclical environments, and how the challenge often in our organizations, our members, is that at the current time, the pipeline of work may not be quite as full as we've experienced in the previous decade. We've got members on our team that we're like, well, are we going to have enough work to keep them busy? And then, of course, we've seen in previous cycles where people have exited construction industry, and then suddenly all the demand comes back, and then we don't have the skilled labor to try and fulfill that new demand. Do you have any guidance for how the members could be thinking about that challenge at this current time?
I think it's probably a New Zealand Inc. issue. I think counter-cyclical investment, it will be extremely beneficial for New Zealand Inc. So, and one of the conversations we've been having with government is when there's a huge demand, material prices go up, labor prices go up. And if government is building big infrastructure programs, when that boom is happening, they're actually paying more to compete with the private investment which is happening within the sector, which in some ways not the best bang for buck for the taxpayer dollars. So any counter-cyclical investment from the government not only get the best value for any dollar spent by the government, because it's not happening when the market is very hot, it also provides more certainty, and I call it better pipeline of work which is coming to the sector, which will stabilize these, I call it, very extreme boom and bust cycles the construction sector goes through. So I think it's probably a New Zealand Inc. issue around how do you, at a government level, can we work through with the government? Again, I call it's a long-term, I think, challenge for them as a policy to start looking at counter-cyclic investment. For our members, I think it's about growing sustainably. So when we go through a significant growth period, it's quite easy with what's happening in the sector to grow unsustainably. And I think some of the challenges we've seen across our membership, and some of our members have got into challenges as a consequence of some of the financial concerns, a big majority of those had grown unsustainably when we went through this boom period. So I think my advice to our members will be sustainable growth, and also knowing that there's light at the end of the tunnel. We've been going through these boom and bust cycle for over 100 years. I looked at some data from 1940s, and if you plot the data today, it looks like it was a data which was crafted, this year. So my message to our members is we go through these cycles as far as we know. From the time we've started recording numbers, we will come out of it. And we will probably start seeing some recovery in 2025. So anything they can do to make their business more sustainable, more diverse, more resilient in the next 6 to 9 months will be our advice for them to do. And when the growth comes, our advice to our members is to grow sustainably, to make sure we're growing in a way that when we come out of this boom cycle to another bust cycle, whenever that happens, we've got good foundations in our business. We've got good cash flows. We have put some money in reserve aside to kind of deal through some of the challenges we're going through. We are picking up projects which standing on their own feet. And I call it, good fundamentals of growing sustainably as a business. So I think we as a sector have to find a way to grow sustainably and find ways to become more diverse in the type of work we do. And I think government can play quite a significant role if they start having a counter-cyclical investment strategy. But I think that's probably not a short-term outcome I'm expecting.
Indeed, wise words. And Ankit, what events have Master Builders got coming up? Where can our members come and connect with you and break bread, so to speak?
The regional House of the Years, which I'm very excited about. So it's time of the year they'll start happening. I think based on what I've heard, there's some amazing houses we are putting up from across the country. We had a commercial project awards a couple of weeks back. That was the largest awards we have taken. We had 119 entries. We had close to 700 people who attended the event. I think it was the largest event we have hosted, which was a great evening. It was great to see some amazing projects showcased across the country. And for me, it was very heartening to see a lot of amazing projects from regions, which are coming through, not just from big cities. Looking forward, I am really looking forward to the Constructive Conference, which is being held on 14th to 15th of August at Takina Convention Center in Wellington. Currently, we're working diligently to organize, another very engaging 2-day event. And I'll be encouraging all our members to mark this time out in their calendars. And I'm looking forward to seeing them over Constructive in August.
Thanks, Ankit. And we got great feedback from Constructive last year, how valuable it was for the people that attended. So likewise, would echo your words and encourage people to get along. Ankit, thank you for joining us on the podcast today. We're going to make this a regular session. I think it's great for our members to hear from you. It'll be fantastic to hear some of the progression of those things that you're already working on. So thanks for joining us today, and look forward to having you on the next Chiefs Chat on the Master Builders Elevate podcast.
Thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate it.